Пыщ-пыщ-пыщ. Сказало рыбко. Кыш. Вы долго просили у меня, и вот снова эта игра мечты. Осталось 2014 стримов. Если не затянет. Если затянет, то не знаю. Так, что у нас? Я никакую машинку не заказал? В смысле не заказал? Нет. Так, блин, что, будем сюжетку делать? За сюжетку больше опыта дают? Привет! Диски и двигатели. Ну, пошли на эту, на стоечку. Да, пойдем проверим на этой штуке. Ау. Почему машина проезжает в ту сторону, а я нет? Так. А я ведь что-то не то делаю, да? Закрой. Начать путь тестирования. Все вроде нормально, чё? 70%, все зашибись. Гоноподъемник. Как вот можно найти вообще, узнать, что это двери, блин, в комнату? Они больше вот на шкаф похожи. Какой-то. Ничего нельзя починить. Так. Что там надо было сделать-то? Так. Диски и двигатель. Износ шин. Не особо мне интересно износ шин. 70%. Это же нормально. Так, ладно. Значит, ты хочешь только диски, да? Нет, давай не будем пока снимать. Он не хочет это снимать. Он же сам сказал. Не хочет только диски. Его тормозят только диски. Зачем ты, блин, снял ее? Диски. Так, 205. То есть он думает, что это дело в дисках, да? Собственно, кто я такой, чтобы спорить? Да, слушай, правда, 20% осталось. Обалдеть, 20%. 20% диска. Ужас. Жуть. Сейчас мы все починим. Все будет как новое, но не новое. Как новое, но не новое. Отсутствуют подходящие детали. То есть мы не можем отремонтировать диски, да? Так, ладно. По состоянию. У нас есть 4 диска. Диск Classic 06, 17 дюймов. Надо опять записывать. Так, понеслось. Покрышки вроде нормальные, да? Classic 06. 17. Чё? Не понял, что с покрышками-то? Покрышки тоже говно. Я что-то не то вставляю, да? Да, я не то вставляю. Так, мне надо Classic 0617. Во. Педалечки какие-то внизу. Или педальки, как правильно. Где ему ту резину тут вообще? Все. Ой, я тебя забыл забрать. Извиняюсь. Все кончилось. Так. Эти нельзя отремонтировать, да? Сортировка по состоянию. А что тут не так состояние? Все же нормально. Так. Значит, это мы не сможем отремонтировать. Ладно. Все на металлолом. Отлично. Все остальное новое. Красота. Так, что нам надо? Давай заднюю поставим. Диски. И 5 деталек в двигателе, да? Почему вы желтые? А, это типа то, что я посмотрел уже, да? Угу. Вот как это работает. Понятно. Прикольно. Так, пошли-ка. Пара-пара-парам-парам. Так, надо перерыв сделать. 2 минутки. С радио беда. О, нет, сразу пас. Похоронный марш. Что-то здесь с радио беда. С радио беда. Надо что-то придумать с радио. Так. Ну чё, двигатель, привет. Нам надо с тобой что-то делать. Я вижу уже какие-то... Автомобиль не хватает колес. Я боюсь, я поставлю колеса, а потом их придется снимать или нет. Да, поставим. Чё нет? Чё нам стоит? Снять колеса, поставить колеса. Делов-то. На 40 минут. Куда мы торопимся? Та-да-да-да-да. Та-ра-та-ра-та. Так, так пониже. Ужас. Ужас. Электронный счетчик. Так, еще что-то не нашел, да? Так, 2 минуты перерыв.
Out and Freddie galloped up the road, the snow treacherous under my slippers. As I tore along, the snowflakes veritably whipped my face, whipped it, and when I reached her, I called out and asked where she was going. "I'm looking for the river." I scooped her into my arms, shocked, even in that queer emergency, by the terrible lightness of the woman, and I carried her back. A few months after Maggie left, she came home on the train one day and said she had managed to book her mother into a drying out hospital a few miles from Mullingar. And whatever Maggie
Проверить я
said
ее
to
не
her
могу
mother,
пока, да?
May agreed to go. I could hardly credit it. They put May under in some fashion for 10 days, and after another 10 days she was ferried back to me, as right as rain. The first thing she did was go down to Queenie's house. Queenie had 5 children of her own by now, and it had been many years since they had had much to do with one another, the two friends. But they went about that day and had a lovely time. May told me that herself. The very fact she was telling me something simple, true and ordinary gave me hope and joy. So it was wretched that in the general atmosphere of drinking in the house, that is to say, my own drinking, she seemed to slip back into it. God forgive me, I pray, God forgive me. And she began to imagine that if only Maggie were there, she might make another effort. But Maggie was not there, was she? She was gone. I couldn't see her so distraught about Maggie, even though I thought it was good for Maggie to get away. There was no work worth taking in Sligo, and I thought I could do better in Dublin. So I put Harbour House on the market, and when the day came, May put on her best surviving coat, and without looking back up the Finnisklen Road, we set off for the new house in Dublin. And though we hardly changed a stick of furniture from the place we threw it that first afternoon, and indeed my boxes of books never were unpacked, but stood in the little hallway for 5 ragged years, it had the nomenclature of home for Maggie then, after we fished her out of her digs. Tumulty is his name, I discover. The White Inspector, as I was calling him. He is back today without his constable. He arrived in an enormous gabardine cloak and a pair of failed galoshes, which brought a great deal of muddy water into my living room. He had heard the low grumble of his car.
Чё ж не делал-то?
Parking in the 3 inches of water.
Как бы тебя посмотреть-то всего?
It turned out he was on something of a mercy mission. A friendly visit, almost. "I understand," he said, "that Mr. Mensah was here to see you." Who's Mr. Mensah? The brother of the woman you may or may not have had dealings with. The man who may or may not have beaten up Coffey Gentry, unless it was you who did or did not beat him up. Right. I was a little reassured that the whole dark affair was still cloaked in multiple ambiguity. Tumulty tried to squeeze some further trouser legs. It isn't important. It's a closed matter, but I have heard that Mensah was extremely unhappy with his visit to you. I don't know if you want to throw light on that. It seemed 1,000 years ago. I can't. I was in the throes of a little malarial attack. Tom Quay was looking after things. I believe he sent him on his way. Well, he has been going about his various drinking places saying very hard things about you. In fact, threatening to kill you.
Начинаем с тебя, да?
So I would just keep a weather eye out for him if I were you. I'm sure he won't come out here again, I said. He probably won't, but he's very vexed. He's had to pay out quite a bit of money to his friend, and he was expecting you to underwrite his losses. I'm glad you're not too bothered, but these chaps have long memories, not unlike those wild boys in Ireland in the 20s. He nodded towards the table. How's the diary going? Oh, it's... I was stuck somehow for the rest of the sentence. I'll get on, he said. But remember, Mensah's a taxi driver. He can move about. He's angry. I tell you, half the time I'm out here, it's like I never left Ireland. He flung the cape over his head again and plunged back out into the deluge.
10%. Вытяжной ролик.
Kieran Hines was reading The Temporary Gentleman by Sebastian Barry. It was abridged by Neville Teller and produced by Gemma McMullen. The story continues tomorrow at 2. At 11 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918, World War I came to an end. Next week, to mark this centenary, here on BBC Radio 4 Extra, Kenneth Branagh reads a selection of the poignant war poems and letters of Wilfred Owen, a poet who served on the Western Front and who was killed during the conflict a week before Armistice Day.
My dugout held 25 men tight-packed. Water filled it to a depth of 1 or 2 feet, leaving, say, 4 feet of air. One entrance had been blown in and blocked. So far, the other remained. The Germans knew we were staying there and decided we shouldn't. Those 50 hours were the agony of my happy life. Every
Так,
10 minutes on
подозреваю,
Sunday
что
afternoons
всю эту
in
хрень
Milan,
надо снимать, да?
I nearly broke down and let myself drown in the water that was now slowly rising over my knees. Towards 6 o'clock, when I suppose you would be going to church, the shelling grew less intense and less accurate, so that I was mercifully helped to do my duty and crawl, wade, climb and flounder over no man's land to visit my other post. It took me half an hour to move about 150 yards.
Блин, после демонтажа.
Kenneth Branagh brings to life the words of Wilfred Owen in Anthem for Doomed Youth. Next Monday to Friday at 2 on BBC Radio 4 Extra. BBC Radio 4 Extra. More now from Tracy Logan and her exploration of the world of colour. Today she delves into how we experience colours and how we use them to express how we feel.
Feeling blue. Seeing red.
69%. Так.
Today, the mood
А ты,
music
Ремень,
of colour.
как у нас
The
чувствуешь
hues
себя?
that help us win or lose, and what the colours we live with tell of our innermost selves.
70%.
This episode of Technicolor begins with a rare sighting of my producer Michelle, who thought it would be wizard to open up my home to the scrutiny of interior designer and colour consultant Karen Haller.
69.
Ever professional, I tried to mask the fear with humour.
69.
I'm kind of intrigued and slightly nervous. I'm a bit worried she might think my curtains are insane. And what sort of prep have you done before today?
А чё я тебе никак выделить
I
не могу?
have dusted and polished. I've put in new light bulbs to accentuate the colours. And I've blocked off the bedroom so she can't see it. Only public areas will be viewed. Hello, is it Karen?
Yes, it is.
Hi, welcome. Come in. You come to do a colour consultation.
That's right. Yes.
Excellent. Would you like to take your coat off?
Yes, thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, action!
There's a raft of evidence coming out suggesting colour can have influences on our behaviour in a number of interesting ways.
Changing something so simple as the colour of your tie could actually influence the way that you're perceived perhaps in a job interview.
Subliminal colour messages from clothing. Later, how your boss or a potential date could be influenced without even realising it. But first, back to my house with interior designer Karen Haller. Opening the living room door, I reveal the colourful truth and secretly hope she likes my favourite
После
curtains.
нормально.
Well, just to describe it, it's one of these knocked-through living rooms. Where we're standing now is kind of close to the dividing line in the back room, which is what we call our reading room. I adore this room. It's really, really colourful. I mean, what do you think about the curtains? I'm not sure that they would be everybody's choice. Let me just draw them across.
69.
Okay, so what we've got here,
70.
there's brown and gold, as well as
70.
warm orange and warm red. Whenever you're picking an item, you're always looking for the colour, you're looking for the shape, and you're looking for the texture. So this is like your expression of your personality.
I mean, I have to tell you that I chose this fabric, which I describe as red and orange boiled sweets lined up along a beige string, out of 60 different swatches of all different colours that I wanted to go with this room. And I had the cream walls, the beige carpet, and the insanely bright primary coloured rug.
Yeah.
And somehow that seemed to go.
It's because these
Да,
colours
нету
all come
никаких
from the
сканеров.
same colour family, and they tonally harmonise and resonate together. Like nature, when you look at trees, you look at fish, anywhere you go, the colours that are used on that one animal or that one plant actually harmonise together. Nature doesn't get it wrong. So this is a harmonious colour palette.
Phew. The curtains are harmonious, despite their pattern of orange gobstoppers. Alas, the musical rug, naive colour blocks shaped like metronomes, guitars and treble clefs, wasn't such a hit.
This rug is the one thing in this area that actually doesn't harmonise with the rest of the room. And the colours and the intensity of the colours are very, very vibrant and very intense. I would think
Демонтаж, значит, хочешь, да?
you wanted some life in here, so you chose colours that gave it a lift, but what they actually do is they actually clash with everything else that's in this room.
A crushing diagnosis, but I remain defiant, and the rug's definitely staying because it makes me happy to look at it. And the curtains, unknowingly inspired by TV designer Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen. Thanks, Lawrence. Fashion magazines and lifestyle programs just love stories about colour and its emotional effects.
Red is vibrant and passionate, the colour of blood, war and fire. It's assertive, bold and risky.
Or perhaps vibrant yellows that make the whole place sunny and reassuring.
Pink, romantic, but can be shocking.
Harmonious pastels, soft lilacs and pinks that just make you feel comfortable.
That may be so for British listeners, but every culture sees things differently. Yellow may be reassuring in an English garden, but in France it signals jealousy, and in China, masculinity.
Фига у тебя
Red is
болтиков
bold
тут.
in Western Europe, while in India it marks purity at weddings. With such a pick-and-mix emotional range to choose from, can there be any real science behind all this? I asked psychologist Dr. Paul Sowden at the University of Surrey whether colour really can affect our mood.
I think the simple answer to that is that in the experiments
Так,
that I've seen
электронный
that explored
счетчик.
that, we don't find any influences in mood.
электронный счетчик.
I think people have lots of subjective reactions to colour and lots of subjective perceptions about how it influences their mood, but actually when it's measured there doesn't seem to be a great deal of impact.
You're not so interested in mood though, are you? You're more interested in the effect that colour has on our behaviour.
Yes, I am. I first got interested in this around 15 years ago, actually. I had an MSc student working for a pharmaceutical company and interested in how the colour of their training materials might affect people's memory for them. And we did actually find some effects of colour on their recall of the training materials, but I must admit at the time I wasn't smart enough to see what this might mean. But now there's a raft of evidence coming out suggesting colour can have influences on our behaviour in a number of interesting ways.
It's something Paul's testing as director of Surrey's newly opened Creativity Research Centre, and he offered to use me as a guinea pig for his latest experiment. So at a desk in a darkened room lit by a small lamp, he placed a book in front of me, surrounded by a royal blue border. Time to start.
What you can see before you is a test booklet laid out on the table, and you're going to see a series of photographs of everyday objects. Sometimes you're going to have to give me the common use for that object, so for instance if it was an image of a kettle, you'd have to say to boil water. Sometimes you're going to have to give me as many uncommon uses for that object as you can in a 30-second time period. An uncommon use for a kettle would be as a paperweight.
That's given me a hint.
Okay.
What is that?
It's a box of matches. If you could give me the common use.
Lighting a candle.
Great, thank you. Now we can see a bike lock, and I'd like you to give me as many uncommon uses for that as you can in 30 seconds.
Блин, как вверх-вниз-то двигать?
An earring for a giant. You could probably put it in soapy water and make giant bubbles out of it. You could tie it to something and it would sink down to the bottom of the ocean.
Okay, I think that's about your 30 seconds up. So now we have a sort of frying pan slice, if you could give me uncommon uses for that.
That's obviously a fly swatter. Yeah, you could use it as a
электронный
catapult. If you
счетчик.
put a lump of mud on the frying pan thing, you could fire that at the enemy. Let's see, you could
Зачем я всё это
also
разобрал
use it
тогда?
as a fan if you're in hot weather. That'll do for now.
Well, we'll come back later
Зря,
to see
да?
whether the blue-edged pictures made me just very silly indeed or unusually creative. Science is starting to see that it's not just colours around us that may change our behaviour, but those we wear too.
Да, сдается мне, что все это я сделал зря.
Football supporters need no lessons on the importance of colour, but does their team strip deliver more than group identity? Russell Hill is an evolutionary anthropologist at Durham University, and he's studied how colour affects performance across all sports.
Looking at Olympic competition, for example, we know that wearing red in sports such as boxing or wrestling or taekwondo leads to a higher probability of winning. And furthermore, what seems to happen is that wearing red tips the balance between winning and
Так,
losing.
стоп, что это у меня за штуки горели?
And you've got some really interesting statistics studying the history of
Нет
football
никаких,
since
да?
the Second World War. There also, red seems to have had an important effect.
That's right, yes. And what we find that teams that have red as their signature strip have performed significantly better, have had higher finishing positions and have accrued more points at home than teams that wear other colours.
But why does red have this powerful effect? Russell says it all goes back to nature. Chatty mandrill monkeys. Among their hordes, dominant males signal mating prowess with a phallic red facial display striking against blue cheeks. Something similar is happening at the rear end too. You couldn't miss them.
In nature, you very often see red coloration used as a badge of status in males.
70%.
And it tends to be related to levels of testosterone that really prime them for dominance and aggression.
Now, as an evolutionary anthropologist, you have drawn links between animals like the mandrill and modern human societies. How strong do you think the parallels are?
I think the parallels turn out to be really quite strong. And of course, humans wear colours all the time. The clothes we wear, the clothes we choose, are displaying colour signals to those around us. And these do seem to manipulate the interactions that we have with others, and particularly in a competitive and sporting context.
It's difficult to imagine how simply wearing a colour could have such a strong effect. I mean, do you have any idea of the mechanism? Is it intimidating the opposing team? Is the referee being biased because of the colour? Do the players feel pumped up because they're wearing red? Any ideas?
Well, we suspect it might be a combination of all three of those elements. It's certainly possible that wearing red could lead to an elevation in your own testosterone levels and therefore better prepare you for competition. But the strongest evidence that's come out of research at the moment definitely shows an intimidation effect or an effect on your opponents in response to wearing red.
You have talked a lot about testosterone and the links with colour. Is it just a male effect, or does this have an effect on both sexes?
No, we expect the effects of wearing red in competition to be exclusively manifest in males. It's certainly true in nature that the relationships between the intensity of red coloration and dominance are confined to males. And certainly when we've looked at sporting data for females, you don't find any effect of the colour that they're wearing on the outcomes of the sport.
That's a shame. Could be a quick way for we less athletic types to get an edge in games. So if colour can't boost my sporting prowess, how about my imagination? Back to that lab test and the creativity-boosting effects of red v blue.
And now we have a teddy bear, common use for that.
Oh, for snuggling.
And if you give me uncommon uses for this traditional handbell.
This is so hard.
Получено достижение первая кровь. Твою ж мать, а.
Great, thank you.
Тоже знал, что так будет.
Is it possible, Paul, to say how I did on creativity and whether the blue had an effect here?
You gave a nice, diverse set of answers for uncommon uses. And I'd certainly say there were some very creative answers in there, some that I haven't heard. The giant's earring, for instance, in the case of the bike lock, was lovely. And what we found as we've been testing people is that when they've been presented with this test booklet with the blue border around the images, we found that they were faster to name an uncommon use for an object. We found that the uncommon uses they generated were more creative. Conversely, when we've been getting people to do the common use naming, then we found that when there's a
Да нет у меня манометра, ну что делать-то?
images they're shown, they tend to be faster
Зря я
to the common use for an object.
начал делать это, да?
The differences in response time can be on the order of a couple of seconds, so they can really be quite significant. What we think is going
Блин, надо качаться до манометра, что ли, теперь мне?
cueing an evaluative analytical process. When you have to come up with the common use for an object, you need to sort of check in your head that it's the right answer. When you're freewheeling ideas for uncommon uses, that analytic processing is less necessary. And that seems to be benefited by the blue colour.
So blue could make me more creative, red more attentive. But could it have other non-work benefits? For instance, the bright red coat I wore to interview Russell Hill.
Well, it is quite possible that the choice of clothes that you made this morning will have influenced the way in which you were perceived by those around you on your journey to work. We know from studies in America that present a female wearing red, a man is willing to invest more money on a potential date on that female than he would do if she was wearing other colours. So it could be the case that commuters looking at you on the train and I guess vying you up as a potential mate might have been willing to spend a little more on you on a date tonight had the opportunity arisen.
The mind boggles. Nice to think I've still got what it takes, even if it is just a red coat.
There's something in crimson.
Next time, the mysterious and ancient arts of dyeing. How a royal coat got its scarlet hue, and the chemists trying to make colour greener.
Technicolor was presented by Tracy Logan, and the producer was Michelle Martin. And Tracy's back tomorrow with Making Colour at 2:15.
This is BBC Radio 4 Extra.
We continue Charlotte Bronte's Shirley, dramatised by Rachel Joyce. Everyone, it seems, has a view of whom Shirley should marry, but she has much more serious things to worry about.
Как тебя демонтировать?
In the summer, Caroline battled with death. Now it was autumn, and maybe it was Shirley's turn. Her clothes hung loose. She spent her days alone. She even made a will. Yet whenever she was asked about her health, she grew impatient.
There's really no need for all this concern, Mr. Moore. I wish people would stop asking.
When I was your tutor, I had some influence over you. Have I none now?
Let me read some French. I will even do a Latin test, but can you stop talking about my health?
Do you sleep as you used to?
I don't. But it's not because I'm ill.
Have you the appetite you once had?
No, again, but not because I'm ill.
Not only have you lost sleep, appetite and flesh, but there is a nervous alarm in your eyes.
You haven't it. I'm a woman. I'm nervous. The weather, for instance. What rain
Why are
we're
you
having.
nervous? Tell me. To talk about it is a way to a cure.
Can you bear a little shock?
I can bear a great one.
Доход 480.
Look. You see my forearm?
What is it? A cut? A burn?
Neither.
Certainly there's nothing in that little mark to shock me.
Так, подвеску мы проверяли.
It's taken my sleep away and made me nervous, thin and foolish. It has caused me to seek out my solicitor. Promise me that you won't leave me at the mercy of cowards when my time comes.
When your time comes? What do you mean?
3 weeks ago, I took a walk. It was a still and shady morning. I was happy to stay outside. My future looked especially bright to me that morning. Then I heard a panting sound. A dog was coming towards me, one of Sam Wynn's pointers. She looked distressed. He beats them, you know. I called her over, and when I attempted to pat her head, she turned and snatched my arm and then ran on. Shortly afterwards, Mr. Wynn's keeper asked if I had seen her. He had to shoot her, he said. She was raging mad and dangerous to anyone who came near.
And you sought no help?
I went to the laundry. While the maid was busy starching, I took up the iron from the fire and applied it to my arm. I cauterized the wound. Then I went upstairs.
And with your powerful, independent mind, you decided, of course, you needed no help.
Shirley tried to laugh, but her eyelash twinkled, and then it glittered, and then a drop fell.
If it's not so, how is it?
I don't know.
You do know, but you won't speak.
It's not worth sharing.
There's not a shoulder in England on which you rest your hand. Of course,
Да
you
как
used to
мне
live
получить
alone.
доступ к камере двигателя?
If needs be, right now the question
Все
is
эти
not how to
штуки
live,
снимать.
but how to die alone.
Давай снимем эти штуки.
You feel the effects of the virus?
I do.
You're very nervous and womanish.
A moment ago, you were complimenting me on my powerful mind. I want your promise, Mr. Moore.
But I will tell no one about the virus.
If what I fear becomes
Что
reality.
мешает?
They will smother me.
They won't.
They will. They always do. Promise to befriend me. Do not let my uncle near. Mind you take care of yourself, though I won't injure you. I never would. Lock the door against surgeons. Then give me a strong enough dose of laudanum to kill me. Promise this.
Promise to kill you.
I can't ask Caroline.
Then I promise.
Thank you. I suppose we should do small talk now. Have you heard from your brother?
No.
The trial was weeks ago.
Да ну, наверх. Поднимись наверх, пожалуйста. Ну давай. Я верю в тебя, ты сможешь.
Don't say I advised it. Tell him his return is advisable.
Before I met you, Mama, I was afraid you wouldn't be kind. And now I know you. I find you have only one fault.
Only one?
You dress like a grandmother.
Где же тебя искать, солнце мое?
I thought you recommended the single life.
When you were ill, you talked to
Скажи мне, как мне тебя разобрать?
Did I?
Чтобы все было хорошо.
As you said, I was ill.
Whose lock of hair is inside?
Sometimes, when we're young, we do foolish things. Now, sit still and let me rub your shoulders. My
Как тебя
own
снять?
Mama, who belongs to me and to whom I belong.
The same evening, the Fieldhead party dined with Sir Philip. Left behind, Louis sat alone in the oak parlour, watching the clouds race across the moon and thinking of no one but Shirley. Meanwhile, at Nunley Prior, Shirley did the same. She stood at the casement windows
Как
and
снять
watched
тебя,
the
зараза?
trees wrestling with the gale. Afterwards, she went to take a closer look at some paintings. Sir Philip joined her. He whispered a few sentences. She remained still. Then she looked up and answered, and they parted. It was only Mr. Simpson who noticed the exchange, but he returned to Fieldhead cock-a-hoop with happiness.
You must prepare for a return journey. Our business is almost done.
I was not aware we were here on business.
My efforts in respect of my niece are likely at last to be crowned with the highest success. A truly eligible addition is about to be added to the family connections.
Do you mean that she will marry Sir Philip Nunnally?
Only this morning, Miss Shirley Keelder received a letter. I saw the crest on the seal. She has gone upstairs to compose her reply. Suffice to say, there will soon be an announcement.
For a day or two, Mr. Simpson seemed to sit on pins.
Да как тебя снять-то,
He was
ты
forever
чё?
watching out of the window.
Did I hear a carriage?
I don't think so.
Strange. I'm sure one will arrive at any moment. Did I hear Shirley call me?
Жопа ты, блин.
Ah, strange. I'm sure she will call me.
Нестроевая.
Mr. Simpson waited another day. He was moved more than once to call Louis Moore again and ask him to address Miss
Так,
Keeley,
перерыв.
but his
2 минуты.
dignity would no longer allow it. Besides, the tutor had perhaps his own private difficulties. He suddenly looked like a student for whom dictionaries are blank. The following day, Mr. Simpson had business in town. He returned looking grave.
May I have a word, Ma'am?
Shirley's face took on the determined look of a person who is about to have a tooth extracted.
Very well, sir.
She followed him in silence to the drawing room.
It seems that Nunnally Priory is shut up. The family have gone back to their place in Sussex. Sir Philip is no longer here. I mean to have a thorough explanation. I insist on being heard. I will have answers.
I would...
Silence!
I'm sorry, I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want me to answer or be quiet?
Did he make you an offer of marriage?
Uncle, I have a headache. I'm not myself. I haven't slept for days.
Did he or didn't he?
He did.
And afterwards he sent you a letter?
You really must stop shouting.
I want to see it.
You can't.
I'm your guardian. I demand to see it.
But I've ceased to be a ward.
Did you accept him?
I refused.
You, Shirley Keelder, refused Sir Philip Nunnally. On what grounds? A man with rank, property, connections?
Uncle, you tire me. I need to lie down.
What are your intentions?
In respect of what?
In respect of matrimony.
To be rather quiet and do as I please.
This is what happens to a woman when she reads French. Your mind is poisoned with novels.
I advise you not to become insulting. I promise I won't stand for it.
What could be your reasons for refusing him?
At last, a sensible question. He's too young for me. He's very amiable, but he's not my master.
He writes poetry?
I'm sorry, Uncle. You write poetry better than he does, and that is saying something. How could I promise to love and obey him? I know full well that any man who wishes to live in decent comfort with me must be able to control me.
Then you want a tyrant for a husband?
A tyrant would not hold me for an hour. The man I marry must be my match. It will be a disaster otherwise.
And have you ever met such a man?
I have been in love a few times.
With whom? Tell me.
Once I loved Socrates, then there was Themistocles.
Enough.
To skip a few centuries, there was Washington. He was a plain man, but I loved him all the same.
This is no laughing matter. You just described now, with far too much freedom for your years and sex, the sort of man you would prefer as a husband. Do you paint from life?
Maybe.
Will you marry a man without money? A man below you? I insist upon knowing.
Then you go the wrong way to find out.
Who will you marry? Who? Don't think I haven't heard the rumors about you and that bankrupt tenant of yours, Robert Moore.
Чё ж ты бы делал?
Is it him you choose?
He is handsome and manly and commanding. He is resolute and honourable.
She has no shame, no fear.
My blood's up. I warn you, I shall turn.
That man is the brother of my son's tutor. Would you have Louis Moore call you sister?
Call me sister. Not for the whole wide world.
Ведь я вот не то делаю, блин. Вот нахер здесь не надо двигатель, да, разбирать?
I will bear no more. Your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your aims are not my aims. Your gods are not my gods. We do not view things in the same light. It is not that I hate you, but we cannot suit. You would marry people for the sake of marriage, for the sake of money and rank. You don't care what happens to children whose parents can't love and don't even know how to say the word.
Ну, как тебя снять?
Your God is a masked death.
Heard a woman speak like this in my life.
Then perhaps you haven't listened.
While this scene transpired at Fieldhead, Robert Moore was making his way home. He rode slowly and alone, contemplating the many mistakes he had made and the loneliness of his future.
Robert Moore! Aye? When the wicked perisheth, there is shouting! Who are you?
Да что, блин, за доступ к камере двигателя? Какой тебе, блин, камеры не хватает, а? Ну?
May I have a word?
I'm sorry, I must have fallen asleep.
I'll come back another time.
No, please, come in. I was afraid you were my uncle again.
Собака.
So I heard. Your uncle should have left you alone.
Я сейчас тебя продам прям разобранный к чертям.
How are you?
Tired. I'm still very
Чё ты мне тут устроил?
Your uncle is about to leave.
Зашел, блин.
And will you go?
He may well change his mind. Besides, he told me some things about your conversation which require a little thought.
I see.
But not now.
Ну как тебя снять?
Bad news. When Mr. Simpson
Как тебя
found me, I was
снять?
busy with a letter. I want you to read it. It refers to my brother.
Is Robert coming home?
He's here
Какой
already.
нахрен доступ к камере двигателя?
Something happened. Let me see.
It might have been worse.
Dear God.
Ты чё, Соня, чё, издеваешься надо мной?
He's my only brother. I can't bear to think of how they hid and waited for him. I'm sorry.
Take my hand.
He's lost a lot of blood. I'm going to see him.
Shall I come?
No.
Да что, блин, за доступ к
I need you
камере?
to do something else.
Shirley? What are you doing here so late? You have to be calm, Carrie. Are you ill? You haven't seen
Чего тебе не
Horizon
хватает,
days.
блин, в этой
Gabriel,
жизни?
can I come inside? I'm afraid I have bad news.
Ну? Собака.
And tomorrow, Shirley and Caroline.
То есть снизу я не мог это открутить, сверху мог, да?
Will survive.
This is BBC Radio 4 Extra.
Hermione Lee's biography of the author Penelope Fitzgerald now, and life for the family is bleak. Desmond has lost his career at the bar and is drinking heavily. The Thames barge they called home has sunk. But despite everything, Penelope is determined to rebuild their lives. The reader is Penelope Wilton.
Я тебя ненавижу уже. Хер с тобой, я все разберу. Мне не сложно.
In November 1963,
Зря
the
такое
family
колесо одел.
moved, now with Desmond, to temporary housing in Earl's Court, where they would stay for just over a year. They lived in a corridor of 4 adjacent rooms in a Victorian house, which Penelope made as comfortable and as homely as she could. There were baths in the basement, a penny in the slot for hot water, and a terrible smell of cooking from the other flats. The welfare officer called regularly. Penelope carried on with her teaching. Desmond began to put his life back together and started work at Lunn Poly in the Edgware Road. He worked in the back office, issuing train tickets. To Valpy, his father seemed a
Гулять
broken
так
man,
гулять.
but at least he had an income
Разбираем
of
всё к
about
чертям.
£700 a year. His job also entitled them to cut price or free travel with Lunn Poly tours, so they were able to resume family holidays and trips abroad together. But they were done on a shoestring. The girls well remembered going into a succession of restaurants with their mother, eating the bread and olive oil, throwing down the menu as if in disgust, and going on to the next place for more free bread. In December 1964, they moved into council housing in South London, though there was some delay with the move, as the letter which told them that they had been found a permanent council flat was sent to Desmond, who put it in his pocket and forgot to give it to Penelope. She found it 6 weeks after he received it. That's how hopeless he was, Maria recalled bitterly and fondly. The address was 185 Poinders Garden, Southwest 4. It was a flat in a large
Чё
red
думать,
brick
надо всё
1930s
разбирать,
estate
чёрт.
on one of the wide trafficy roads that ran south
Потом
from
продадим
Clapham Common towards
кому-нибудь,
Streatham.
и они соберут.
Quite a long haul from the Clapham South
Хитрые.
Underground station. The rent was £7 a week. There was no garden, but Penelope could put pots on the balcony, and next door was a forlorn little municipal park with a few scrubby trees. She would sneak out at night and get earth from the beds for her plants, and on fine days would often sit on a bench there and read so as to get out of the flat.
Так, еще не нашел
She furnished and
деталик.
decorated the flat as best she
Хорошо.
could, painting the kitchen and the bathroom in the same bright, strong colours she had used in Hampstead and Suffolk, putting lino remnants down for the kitchen and the lavatory floors, stripping pine furniture. Tina was 14 and Maria 11 when they moved in. In their teenage diaries, emotional, banal and self-absorbed, as all such diaries are, the daily life of the Fitzgeralds is displayed in sometimes bruising detail. The family shorthand for being drunk was bonking, or bonky. Desmond is often reported on as coming home late, drunk and with no money. Daddy bonking again, had to put him to bed. Daddy came back penniless. Food is a major item. Clearly Penelope was doing standard 1950s low-budget cooking. Macaroni cheese, Welsh rarebit, baked beans, eggs, bacon, fried bread, and fruitcake feature
Ну
large.
почему ты не снимаешься?
But mixed in with the daily grind,
Колено
a
волна
sense comes
поднимет.
through in these
Отлично.
diaries of endless activities. Walks, outings, films, expeditions,
Всё мне
and of parents who
ясно
wanted the
стало
best for them.
теперь.
Daddy tested me on my Latin until late. Mother told me the plot of Hamlet and heard my Spanish. As on the boat, Penelope slept on a bed in the dining and living room. She used the Clapham Branch Library for books and shopped in the market in Balham High Road, cooking on the gas stove, knitting and mending, and making clothes from material bought in the sale. Every weekday she went doggedly off to work, typically wearing smocks and full skirts and sensible flat shoes. Her hair bushy and unkempt. No hairdresser's bills were possible, and no makeup. I tried dyeing my hair with a tea bag, but it did not make much difference. But also, all the time, she wanted beauty and art and fine language and ideas. Listened to the third program.
Карта сараев добавлена. Блин. Я, блин, карту сараев нашел, да? В двигателе? Негодяи. Где моя карта сараев?
Poynter's Gardens was her home for 11 years, until December
Да, я хочу сарай на
1975,
карте
all through
посмотреть.
her 50s. During these difficult years, she slogged away, teaching and shopping, sewing and cooking and cleaning, to keep them going, determined that all 3 children should be educated, independent, and professionally qualified. However difficult family life was, Valpy recognized later that they owed everything to their mother. I think we must realize that Mama has been through absolute hell to keep us together. You know perfectly well where we would have ended up if we'd been left with Daddy. By 1971, Penelope Fitzgerald had the idea for her first book. This was a biography of the Victorian painter Edward Burne-Jones, for whose work she had a passion going back to her childhood. He had designed the stained glass window of Birmingham Cathedral.
Не повезло тебе, блин, мужик.
He also attracted her
Ты отдал свою машину в ремонт человеку, который не понимает ни хрена в ремонте.
To her family, she referred to the book as My Little Bit of Writing.
Придется тебе
By
без
April
машины теперь.
1972, she had a contract with the publisher Michael Joseph. This was also the year in which Tina, now 22, graduated from Oxford and set up house in Muswell Hill with her future husband, Terence Dooley. Maria, aged 19, went up to Oxford to read physiological sciences, and Valpy, now aged 25, and married to his Spanish wife, much to Penelope's consternation, was lecturing in Cambridge.
Здорово. И тебе от всех привет. Я говорю от лица всех. От лица того миллиона зрителей, которые сейчас молча хлопают тебе, твоему присутствию. Вот. Рассказывай, как сам, чё, где был, чё видал.
In 1973, she became a grandmother for the first time, though she did not see as much of Valpy Gregory Fernandez Fitzgerald as she would have liked.
Не надо ли тебе отремонтировать машину?
She wanted to write a book about her father and his famous Knox brothers. That spring and summer, she set about
я тут
writing
как раз
letters,
занят
visiting libraries, and making
одной.
contacts with friends, colleagues, and relations of the Knox brothers.
Ну, в смысле, не то чтобы это была машина. Скорее это могла бы быть машина, если бы я после Дизы, после какой Дизы? Чё за Диза?
Though they did play some games of croquet, Penelope cheated.
Чё за Диза?
In October, she wrote to Maria.
Короче,
Daddy going to the dock again on Wednesday.
Я нечаянно разобрал
I
машину.
can't help feeling there must be some kind of
Это была случайность.
This test would be inconclusive. In January 1975, Penelope went to Russia with Maria on a 2-week package tour with other tourists.
О, я, кажется, нашел, что сломан, да? Ну-ка. Твою мать, а? Корпус вентилятора. После Dishonored. Корпус вентилятора, система охлаждения, крыльчатка вентилятора. Обалдеть, крыльчатка вентилятора.
Penelope told Maria, not wanting to worry her too much, that he was going to have an operation for a nasty ulcer in the back passage.
А я у него все поснимал. Крыльчатка вентилятора. Прости, братан. Эу. А, это диски, да. Не там ищем, сам виноват.
Penelope started to write a story, which filled 4 red notebooks. It was to be a light comic thriller, inspired by the Tutankhamun exhibition and her trip to Russia.
Я зря я, наверное, ее купил, да? Ну-ка, посмотрим, что мы сможем отремонтировать.
This would be her first novel, The Golden Child. When asked later why she'd started to write fiction,
$48 стоимость ремонта? А плевать, давай все деньги всадим.
She was told, after his operation, that Desmond could live. The children knew this. Desmond, it seems, was not told. Tina and Terence were buying a house in Almeric Road, a side street of terraced houses.
Посмотрим, что из этого получится.
And the plan was for Desmond and Penelope to make the long-desired departure from Poinders Gardens and move in with them, so that they could share the burden of care. Penelope found his illness difficult to deal with.
И нет, начал беситься. Беда.
And she would often sit silent in the hospital. In August,
так что мы смогли починить-то или чего?
And in September, Penelope signed a contract with Macmillan for the Knox brothers with an advance of £1,000. Desmond tried to start work again.
Твою ж дивизию-то, я еще и поломал детали.
The family was sitting round his bed on the 15th of September. It was the day Edward Burne-Jones came out.
Твою мать.
Penelope said, "It's my publication,
во балбес.
and nobody cares." In December, they moved from Poinders Gardens to Almeric Road. There is no record of Penelope's feelings on closing the door behind her on the council flat, where she had put their lives back together. Desmond had to go back into the Royal Marsden in June.
И теперь я это не смогу записать. Никогда так не делайте. Это просто какой-то кошмар.
They got him home to Almeric Road,
Я же все похерил.
and he died on the 19th of August at the age of 59. That autumn, Penelope wrote to her old
Все,
friend
что
Willie
нажито непосильным
I
трудом.
was told a year ago after his op that Desmond couldn't live.
Это просто кошмар какой-то.
And I do feel it as a dreadful blow. Only I really oughtn't to complain.
Батюшки Светы, что ж ты натворил-то?
The truth is,
Не ругайся только, не ругайся.
as with all our ups and downs, Desmond always thought everything I did was right. I'm so glad we were able
Ругаться
to get
плохо.
the move over so that Desmond died at home and not in hospital. The district nurse was there that morning. Such a kindly person. Not much of a nurse, but a very good woman. And she helped me to see him out of this world and read a Bible chapter.
Радиатор
Absolutely
69.
naturally,
Ставим.
as only a West Indian could.
Так, что нам надо?
And I have to be glad the suffering is over. But I do miss him. To her daughters, when he died, she
А,
said,
ну крыльчатку мы хотя бы
"Don't
починили,
leave
да?
me to live on my own."
Или что это такое? А, я ее купил. Ёперный театр, корпус вентилятора. Теперь надо.
Penelope Wilton was reading
Корпус
Penelope
вентилятора,
Fitzgerald
система
Alive by
охлаждения.
Hermione Lee. It was abridged by Lily
Так.
Spurrier and produced by
Да.
Joanna Green. It is a peer production for
Да,
BBC Radio.
блин.
Tomorrow, following
Это
Desmond's
надолго.
death, Penelope moves in with her
Да,
daughter,
я
and
все
writes her
переломал.
second novel.
Я не думал, что они ломаются. Теперь я знаю это. Корпус
Desert
вентилятор,
Island
система
Discs
охлаждения. Мне вот такой надо,
on
да?
BBC Radio 4 Extra.
Я сейчас еще не техно покупаю. Ой, блин. Короче. А! Да собирать же надо.
Ruby, a pioneer, really, in that kind of television. I mean, arguably the forerunner
Мы же
of
собираем.
of Graham Norton, Mrs. Merton, seeming to be harmless, and yet getting the kind of material that an investigative reporter would kill for. But the trick there, first of all,
Обалдеть, корпус воздушного фильтра сломан. К чертям собачьим. Ну и руки у меня. Не матерись, ну пожалуйста, а. Не модно материться. Не модно. Не матерись. Ну и, кстати. Тоже громко писать тоже не модно. Да, рукожоп получился такой. Ладно, чё. Поставим все новое тогда, за свой счет. Это я влечу 1000 на 2, наверное, да? А плевать. Гулять так гулять. Ну и балбес. Так, корпус воздушного фильтра. Вот и жалко отсюда нельзя. Завылезать. Корпус воздушного фильтра. Я так чувствуется с моим уровнем ремонта. Корпус воздушного фильтра. Да, ёлы-пал, нет, я, пожалуй, не на... Пожалуй, я побольше влечу на деньги-то. Так, и мне надо, скорее всего... Надо мне, наверное, планшет купить, чтобы не ходить каждый раз. С таким, блин... Мне пофигу, ладно, сходим. Надо экономить. Раз... Такой рукожопый товарищ, надо, блин, экономить. Крышку мы тоже сломали. Крышка воздушного фильтра. Крышка воздушного фильтра. Обалдеть. Еще 42 бакса. Это ж, блин, можно столько игр купить было. Ну, отстань. Отстань. Зато у человека будет все новое. Так, у меня 2 зажима из 4. Зажим типа А. Понял вас. Зажим типа А. Блин, да, мне нужен планшет. Надо брать. Получен достижение I know how to use it. Отлично. Зажим типа А. Хорошо. Так, где мой планшет? Зажим типа А. Зажим типа. Чё? Зажим. Я типа с большой буквы написал. С маленькой буквы написал, надо было большой. Так. Да, ёлы-палы. Зато у пацана все будет новое. Как компьютерщик компьютерщику. По-братски ему поставлю все новое. Сейчас заодно и узнаем, модно это. Аккумулятор-то я ему не сломал. Так, аккумулятор на месте. Так, блок цилиндров тоже остался целым.
There had been a brief interlude in her residence here when 20 years ago she had married her late and unlamented husband, of whom the less said the better, and she had lived for 18 months outside the precinct. At his death, which took place beneath the traction engine, the driver being quite exonerated from blame in the accident, she had returned to her father's house in Durham Square and has long ago succeeded in forgetting all about that unhappy experience. The only effect it has had on her is that since then she has never tasted intoxicating liquor. Durham Square in those early days was very different.
Так, тоже насос тоже не сломался. Это хорошо. Это что такое? Усилитель тормоза тоже не сломался. Прекрасно. Эту хрень. Так, тоже цел. Зашибись. Так, прекрасно. Я кручу. Так, надо сделать перерыв. Пойти выпить стопочку. После такого, блин, напряжения рабочего, что я переломал столько деталей по своей глупости, блин. Как вот так можно было сделать, а? Ай, так, это убираем. Так, это все снизу, да? Ну, пошли снизу ковыряться. Так, 2 минуты перерыв.
Is at this moment standing on the steps of number 25, beside Mr. Woodstock, senior partner of Woodstock and Chepstow, estate agents of Bloomsbury, London, West 1.
Your interest in this residence is, I'm given to understand, on behalf of your friend, Miss Legg?
That is so.
A most desirable address. Mrs. Mantrip's father, the Reverend Bonfield, lavished every care on these premises, as you can see. And it's very seldom that one comes upon the market.
I can quite believe it. These gardens in the middle of the square, are they for the sole use of the tenants?
Oh, yes, indeed, Mr. Cartwright. Each householder has a key, and with it the enjoyment of the amenities, including the summer house, which you can just see through the sumac trees. No dogs are allowed, of course.
But there appears to be a lady just over there, surrounded by quite a swarm of Pekingese. Mrs. Mantrip, perhaps? Exercising not only her dogs, but her droit de signorina.
Indeed, no. That is Miss Elizabeth Conklin, I think. Yes, it is. Shall we go in? I fear that of latter years the anti-dog prohibition has failed to command the respect that it should. Mrs. Conklin would be Miss Legg's neighbour on this side.
With her dogs?
She breeds them in kennels in her backyard, but most hygienically and with the minimum of fuss.
Oh, that would not worry Miss Legg. Sigurd, her Alsatian, is a very gregarious beast.
Excellent. Shall we go up to the first floor sitting room?
By all means. And Miss Legg's other neighbour?
Mr. Mason, Mr. James Mason, a charming gentleman, most artistic. Now, if you look from the landing window here, you can see the very spacious music room he's built out at the back. His parties are, I'm given to understand, a great feature of the social life of the square.
Miss Legg would certainly approve of that. She's also devoted to music. Devoted.
And this is the sitting room.
Charming. Quite charming. Well, Mr. Woodstock, I have a feeling the house will suit Miss Legg extremely well. You have her bank references, and I think after certain redecorations have been carried out, she will be delighted to take up residence.
And so it is that on a fine afternoon in July, Miss Susan Legg, a resident now of some 6 days' standing, is leaning on the railings of her balcony outside her sitting room on the first floor of number 25 Durham Square, observing with the intense interest of the comparative newcomer.
Пыщ-пыщ. Так, секунду. Что надо было сделать? Поднять эту штуку, да? Да, отстань там.
Nearly had her over. And Mrs. Mantrip's come out onto her balcony. Cooey!
Вау. Балка, поперечная, передняя. Где мой планшет?
Four, 5, 6, but there are 7, no 8, and 2 more in the bushes. Something must be done about it.
$500. Не, я, по-моему, 1000 на 5 влечу с этой фигней. Нормально я тут поремонтировал. Как боженька. Бог. Бог автосервиса, блин. Король автосервисов всех. Мировой король автосервисов. Я и снизу все разобрал. Ой. Я что, и там все разобрал, что ли?
And begins talking genially and confidentially to the men who are carrying the apparatus for his party. Mrs. Mantrip observes this too.
Just as if he was their aunt.
Странно. Странно, эта штука не сломалась.
Get one of your pals to help you. You'll strain your inside and your mother will scold me. Now come on, another of you.
Здорово. Да, я тут, блин, поломал все детали, короче. Только что. Нечаянно. Как-то никто мне крупными буквами не написал, что я могу сломать все детали, вместо того, чтобы починить их. Вот. И поэтому теперь я влетел на какую-то сумму денег. И мы узнаем теперь, заплатят ли мне за это. Или я просто буду работать в себе в убыток. И гараж придется отдать за долги.
He catches sight of Mrs. Mantrip on her balcony and goes straight on without pause, for his tongue, so the sarcastic Square believes, has discovered the secret.
Я тут столько ремонтировал, типа. Хотел ремонтировать что-то. И вдруг такая неожиданная засада у нас получилась. Так, эти не сломались, ладно. Хорошо. Ну, ремонтник. Ну, блин, строитель. Ну, король автосервисов. Батюшки, как таких земля носит? Да дело в том... Нет, дело в том, что я просто решил такой... Проходил мимо верстака и такой, о, А дай-ка я поремонтирую, короче. И видишь, и все, теперь эти штуки нельзя поставить даже. А они были все нормальные. Я их просто поломал. Кожух шарнира передней оси. Вот в чем дело-то. Кожух шарнира. И теперь мне приходится их за свои деньги покупать. А я не хотел бы. Но придется. Что делать?
I'm like the young lady from Banbury Cross who has music wherever she goes.
I'll go and call on Miss Legg. I'll see what I can do. One must be tactful, of course, with a new.
Походу, я влечу тысяч на 5.
Oh, you know, the square isn't what it used to be. Less peaceful. What is it, Figgies?
Piano's stuck in the hall, sir, and they can't get it round the corner.
О, суппорт тормоза.
Oh, excuse me, dear Margaret, I must see to this.
Так, суппорт тормоза.
I ordered a concert round, you see, and I suppose I forgot how vast they are.
Of course I excuse you, and tell Figgis not to bother about tea for me. I can see you're.
Не понравилось, вот. И мне что-то не очень понравилось. Я думал, так лучше, оказывается, нет. И вот раньше-то я тоже типа ремонтировал то, что после ремонта остается, но что-то я думаю, ой, как здорово кнопочки нажимаются. И они, оказывается, не очень здорово нажимались. И не совсем было понятно, типа. Становится лучше или не становится. Я думал, они просто чинятся не с первого раза, например, но а оказалось нет.
Yes, indeed, you will see me, Elizabeth. I'm dining there first. I've been helping him to arrange the table.
Indeed. Whom are you sitting next?
Let me think now.
Так, значит, ремонт мы больше качать не будем. Ну, пока у нас не появится миллион ненужных денег. Вау. С ремонтом деталей мы определились. Что-то пошло не так. Так. Чего у нас еще не хватает? О. Вот этот вот отремонтировался. И этот... Кто? Не, да фиг себе. Обойдешься еще. Качественные мосты тебе ставить? Нет. Давай обычные мосты тебе поставим. Так, здесь все, что ли? Не все.
Can't you remind her when you call that dogs are not allowed in the garden? Large dogs, you know.
Yes, I quite agree about that huge dog. Au revoir, dear. I think I shall call on Miss Legg straight away.
Так, я, блин, сейчас, по-моему... Опять что-то накосячу, да? Ты будешь мне вставать? Так. Крышка подшипника коленвала. Сломал 2 штуки. Или 3 даже вообще. Раз. Два. Крышка подшипника коленвала. Надо было сохранить. А кто знал-то? Я вообще не думал, что так отработает. Крышка подшипника. Коленвала. Давай возьмем 2. Еще минус 80 баксов. Можно было процессор купить на эти деньги. i7, чтобы не лагала игра. Ужас. Жуткий жуть.
One single glance quite reassures Mrs. Mantrip. Miss Legg is a small woman of early middle age and totally devoid of any meretricious attraction in face or figure. Her nose is slightly tip-tilted, giving her a look of inquisitive intelligence. Her eyes set rather noticeably apart in a pale, round face.
Это надо сверху. А здесь... А вот эти штуки тоже сверху, да? А вот эта штука. Так, здесь что-то у нас нету. Остановите-то. Кожух шарнира передней оси. Надо покупать теперь. Кожух шарнира. Шарнира передней оси. Ой, ну и двоечник. Вот так и разоряются, блин, автосервисы. Чувствуется. Так, передние ступицы тоже, блин. Коту под хвост. Передняя ступица. Ступица. Еще $104.
Take my tea at exactly 4:30. How fortunate you got here just in time.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not at all, mademoiselle.
Sugar? And milk or cream? Do you like your milk put in first? Dear me, I haven't asked you if you prefer Indian tea. It'll be ready in
Суппорт тормоза тоже к чертям, да? Суппорт тормоза.
Very well. I wonder what my chef has sent me up under the cover. Oh, yes. Little scones with caviar in them. He knows I'm partial.
Еще $71. Да чё, как дорого-то тут все?
Take 2. I always do.
Well, they do look delicious.
Such a deal to do, I'm sure you find, Mrs. Mantrip. But I do feel that at tea time, one deserves to sit down and spoil oneself.
Oh, yes. I spent a solitary but such a happy morning reading over parts of my father's diary. I have volumes and volumes of it. All his life work so faithfully and beautifully recorded.
How wonderful. What a privilege to hear about it. All his life work.
Так, ладно, это не сломалось. Теперь тягу можно поставить? А, вот это еще надо.
He was a man of the cloth, Miss Legg.
О.
The Reverend George Frederick Bonfield.
Нет, давай без этих. Без улучшенных.
This square was a moral slum when Papa first came to
Я
live
и так
in the
тут
house I now
влетел на деньги. Они мне
Dear
хотят
Papa
еще.
began buying up houses as the leases expired and letting them only to thoroughly desirable tenants.
Так,
And I have striven to keep to his precepts. He
Что-то
himself
здесь не
regarded
хватает.
it as his mission to the end.
Или все есть. Так, это стоит, это стоит. Это стоит. Колеса пока не будем ставить. Я слишком часто их снимаю. Так, здесь все. Я тут-то ничего не ломал. Так, трубы есть какие-то. Не знаю, что это за трубы. Но меня радует, что они есть. Будем называть вас просто трубы. Чем вы, собственно, не трубы? Так, что тут еще надо поставить? О, крышка подшипника коленвала. Да, ёлы-палы, хватит ее разбирать-то, блин. Не собирать надо. А вот эти штуки как мне собрать? А, это сверху, да? Ладно. Полезли сверху. Посмотрим, что сверху можно приделать к этой штуке. Будет ли это все работать? О, смотри, какая штука. Стартер. Не знаю для чего. Наверное, чтобы стартовать. Хотя, не факт ведь. Поршень в сборе с шатуном. Я тебя сломал? Нет, поршень не сломал. Отлично. Наверное, их нельзя сломать. То есть их, скорее всего, нельзя отремонтировать, поэтому они не сломались. Можно будет гайд написать по этой игре. Чего не надо делать, ну, как обычно. Я же косячу. Ну, ты вставишь? Нет? Эу. Блин. Да что такое-то? Ну как мне тебя выделить? Сложно. Но я справился. Вау. Что это такое? Головка блока цилиндров. Я тебя тоже не сломал. Красота. Благодарю тебя, головка блока цилиндров, что ты не сломалась. Не поддалась моим шаловливым рукам начинающего автослесаря. О, а вот выпускной коллектор слабоват. Да бы. Выпускной коллектор. Выпускной коллектор. Блин. Выпускной коллектор. Кошмар. Делов-то был на 20 минут. Я же... Все. К чертям. Испоганил. Ладно. And if he mislaid anything, he always thought his leg had stolen it, and took his trousers down to see where it had put it. Ты слышишь это вот, наверное, это? Владельцы стоят и обсуждают меня за спиной. Вам слышно радио? Это я тоже сломал, точно. Защита выпускного коллектора. Защита выпускного коллектора. And I'll let you know shortly what I shall wear. Very good, ma'am. I shall be in the library. I have some important work to do on my dear father's diaries. Yes, ma'am. Авто-то да, как новое теперь будет. Жалко только, что за это не заплатят, скорее всего. Хотя, фиг знает, сейчас посмотрим. Кстати, и посмотрим. Заплатят нам за это или нет. Так, это тоже не сломалось. Спасибо тебе, солнце, что ты не сломалась. Свечки. Вау, одна свечка даже вообще отремонтировалась. Блин, или это вообще не моя была свечка? Ну-ка, стой, у меня там была свечка какая-то крутая. Может, я тебя поставил? Ну-ка, иди сюда. Что-то я погорячился хорошие свечи вставлять. Так, ну-ка, вот твоя свеча. +3 зафигачил ему свечу. Ну тебя нафиг. Я и так тут в минус попал из-за своих рук шаловливых и отсутствия крупного шрифта, которым мне предупреждалось: никогда не пытайся ремонтировать запчасти, пока у тебя не будет, блин, 100% ремонта. О, топливная рампа. Блин, как бы не поставить на самом деле. Я, по-моему, что-то свое поставил. Хорошее, вкусное, что я берег для чего-то непонятного. Или на аукционе. Слушай, а ты не пробовал на аукционе что-нибудь продавать? Или ты еще не докачался до него? Я так понимаю, этот аукцион, он же это... Типа между игроками, да? Или нет? Или я неправильно что-то понимаю? А то мы, походу, с тобой вдвоем играем в игру, то можно поставить, может попробовать поставить что-нибудь на аукцион. Просто посмотреть, работает это или нет. Кожух привода R4. Привет, король игр. Все нормально, ну, исключением того, что я тут на бабло влетел. Блин, я уже на 2000, короче, влетел денег, вот просто ни за что. Кожух двигателя R4 мне надо, да? Кожух. Вот этот, да? Я надеюсь, что этот. Короче, на бабло я тут влетел с ремонтом чужой машины из-за своей глупости. Никогда так не делай. Во-первых, никогда не берись ремонтировать чужие машины, если ты в этом ничего не понимаешь. Во-вторых, не пытайся никогда ремонтировать детали для чужих машин. Да, я такой. Как ты, блин, 2 дня? Это ж целая жизнь, блин. А чё ты не играл 2 дня? Офигел, что ли? Да у меня память-то, я же всегда говорю, что память у меня ни к черту. К тому же у тебя ники везде разные. Надо делать одинаковые ники. Натяжной ролик А. Натяжной ролик А. Я вот даже пока буквы большие набираю, и то забываю, что мне надо было. А ты мне про ники. Натяжной ролик А. 19 баксов. Коту под хвост. Вот можно было бы тебе Диабло купить. А я, блин, трачу это на то, чтобы, блин, купить натяжной ролик А. Где ты? Вот ты. Крутись давай. Так. Это что такое? Шкиф R4. Отлично, ты не сломался. Благодарю тебя, Шкиф. Я пытался отремонтировать лемень клиновой тип Б. Лемень клиновой тип Б. Блин. Лемень клиновой. Лемень клиновой. Клиновой тип Б. Клиновой Б. Давай. Допустим, это ты. Чего аккаунт просрочен? В смысле? В Ходсе? Какой к черту аккаунт просрочен? Ты что? Или просрон? Просран аккаунт? Ну-ка, давай-ка расскажи-ка мне про что у тебя с аккаунтом и как это вообще возможно. Чтобы я себе так не сделал. Я ведь тоже могу, видишь, я как тут с ремнями клиновыми. Натяжитель ремня тоже сломался. Натяжитель ремня. Натяжитель ремня. Ты тут один. Спасибо тебе, натяжитель ремня. Давай расскажи, что за аккаунт и что такое. Что случилось? Я хочу все знать.
At lunch, she refers to her napkin as
ремень клиновой тип А. Так. Ремень клиновой тип А. Клиновой тип А. Еще $28. Давай пиши, чего ты? Ты пишешь там? Или все, ушел? Почему завтра-то? Ты что, ты на уроке, что ли, пишешь, смотришь стримы? Эй. Так. Что я тут еще не приделал? Так, ладно, катушка не сломалась. Хорошо. Меня радует, что катушка не сломана. Так, все что ли? Так, что, диски осталось поставить? Да ладно, неужели я ее собрал? Что-то я не верю, наверное. Сейчас узнаем.
Yoga is magic and black magic at that. I had a friend who studied yoga and she went completely off her chump, such as it was. Most dangerous. I never liked Indian philosophy. The Indians say that dogs are unclean. Wretches. Some of my dogs are the purest Christians. Reincarnation is the only solution to the evil we see in this world.
Oh, Vicar, I'm
Ты мне, блин, расскажи сначала про аккаунт, про свой. Что у тебя случилось? И куда ты меня в друзья добавляешь? О чем речь? Так, стоп.
An extraordinary feeling came over me. Was it not odd? For I'd never been there before. That I knew the Petit Trianon quite well.
И где ты меня в друзья добавляешь? И когда ты меня в друзья добавляешь? Мне вчера кто-то предлагал в друзья добавиться, но я думал, что это с какой-то игры, а я не добавляю незнакомых людей. Это ты был?
There's a new book by Rudolph da Vinci. Rosemary and
Это был ты?
Oh, I must get it at once. And I do hope there's another colossal moujik who keeps whipping the heroine.
Так.
I never laughed so much in my life. Rudolph da Vinci.
Обалдеть. Так, ну...
Greatest treat of modern times. Quite incredible. You can't believe it even when you read it.
I don't know how people can read him.
Что-то, ну, походу, я не... Да нет, я влетел на деньги. Только здесь. Почему-то это вообще не отражается никак. Ой, беда. Да, ну пиши еще раз. А что с аккаунтом-то? Напиши мне, что с аккаунтом. Это был не твой, что ли? Не хватает Сейлент Блок? Твою ж мать. Сейлент Блоки вроде снизу где-то, да? Я ведь, знаешь, такой человек-то. Так, Сейлент Блок. Я хер знаю, где это Сейлент Блок. Где его искать? Блин, 8000 баксов. У меня уже 10 было тысяч баксов, только я просрал все. Растешь. Ты меня пугаешь своей. Я не расту. Я трачу деньги на всякую херню, блин. Как обычно. Вместо того, чтобы... Ничего. Обычный режим. Чего мне не хватает? Где Сейлент Блок, блин? Да где ты, блин? Что такое Сейлент Блок? А, вот он. Я помню, что он где-то здесь. Типа я помню, что он где-то здесь. Так. А как? Да можно было без него доехать нормально. Кому нужны эти Сейлент Блоки, а их почти не видно? Так, они вообще вон... Название-то какое еще? Сейлент Блок. Че они там? Сайленс накладывают? Или с салом связано? Все, что ли? Да блин! А, я еще масло не залил. Черт, точно. С автовками. Да блин, что завтра-то? Сейчас пиши. Так, стоп, отставить. Почему завтра-то? Пиши сегодня. То есть, блин, мне игра написала, что мне не хватает поддона, хотя у меня тут движок еще не собран. То есть это единственное, что ее волнует. Отсутствие поддона? Так, мне надо крышка шатуна. Сколько штук надо? 2, да? Крышка шатуна. Крышка шатуна. Шатун, это ж медведь. Как? Да что, издеваетесь, что ли? 40 баксов такая железная херня? Это что еще такое? Что за цены, блин? Какие вообще... Как... Блин, неужели нормальный человек купит вот эту хрень, если можно, блин, ездить на такси и не заниматься всей этой ерундой? А? Кем надо быть, чтобы, блин, иметь свою машину? А? Хорошо, что у меня среди моих друзей нет таких людей. У меня все нормальные ездят на маршрутках. Ужас какой, да что это такое? Кто это вообще мог придумать все это? Да вообще, одна железка, это просто... Это, блин, Ведьмака можно взять. Со всеми дополнениями. С раздетой Йеннифер. Да елы-палы, масло тебе. Да кому нужно масло в двигателе, а? Есть вообще такие люди, которые наливают в двигатель масло? Ну, кем надо быть, блин? А тебе масло, хрен с тобой. Я еще на 100 баксов попал, когда, блин, это... Все, что ли? Хватило тебе масла? Я проверю. Может, я тебе много налил? Нормально. Так, что еще не хватает? Давай определимся. Теперь ты можешь завершить заказ? Блин, я влетел... Наверное... Блин, кто может отмотать на начало стрима и посмотреть, сколько у меня было денег? По-моему, у меня было, блин, 10 на 1000 больше. Ладно, зато мне дали ящик. Хотя... Что значит зато? Давай лут. Ладно. Пускай этот лутбокс будет из одних золотых деталей. Плюс 2, плюс 1, плюс 1. Это круто. Так. Это ужасно. Сколько всякой хрени я тут похерил, а? Да. Ремонтник, золотые руки, блин. Ну куда тебе? Кто бы настучал тебе по рукам-то, когда ты тыкал в эти кнопочки? Это ужасно. Строитель, блин. Вот, короче. На 1500 баксов я влетел. Со своим неуемным стремлением нажимать кнопку ремонт. Если кто увидит, что я подошел к верстаку еще раз, короче, бейте меня по рукам сразу. Прямо орите вовсю. Не подходи к верстаку. Вот так вот, вот к этому. Вот раз. Вот. Никогда не подходить к верстаку. Надо записать. Вот. Блин, какие у меня тут классные детальки. Сказка просто, а не детальки. Так, я поднял уровень какой-то, да? Уровень поднял. Так, вот эта штука. Ужасная штука. Так. Так что с аукционом-то? Я вот про это имел в виду. Ты... Хер знает, что это такое. Или это, блин, не то, что я думаю. Так, ладно, теперь надо деньги отбивать как-то. Сюжетный заказ. Едя по другому городу, я не заметил лежачего полицейского. Проверь, пожалуйста, в каком состоянии передняя подвеска, потому что мне кажется, что там что-то не так. Едя. Нет такого слова, блин. Едя. Нельзя же так говорить, едя. Или можно? Так, давай с Маеном попробуем, что у нас тут. В двигателе нет мощности. Ну давай посмотрим, что у тебя там мощности у тебя нет в двигателе. Мощности у него нет в двигателе. Ну как так-то? А? Так, катушка зажигания. Дроссель. Не знаю, что это такое. Топливная рампа. По-моему, мне такая еще не встречалась. И машина не заводится. Топливный насос. Так, топливный насос где-то я видел. Катушка зажигания. Хер знает, где она может быть. Вроде не очень глубоко надо залазить, да? Так, опять масло сливать, что ли? Нет? Катушка зажигания. Можно проверить с помощью сканера. Блин. У меня нету сканера. Близкон. Слушай, Близкон вот прям на днях. По-моему, завтра, что ли. Катушка зажигания 5%. Иди-ка ты. Так, отставить заметки. Удалить записи детали. Добавить в список. Катушка зажигания. Так. Дроссель.
But in the evenings, alone in her quiet room in the modest boarding house where she lives, the images and incidents that swarmed into her mind and the clacking of the agency typewriters desert her completely.
Oh, dear me. Nothing will come. And yet, at that noisy agency, I have no time at all, even to scribble a few notes. My head is simply teeming with.
А тебе как залезть? Штучка. Топливная рампа. 14В. Так. Даже ничего не надо было снимать. Так, и еще какая-то херня. Или все? Че, 3 детали, что ли, все? О, что, сзади еще что-то? Он ты как? Какая ты, блин, хитрая. Ну-ка. А как тебя достать? Бульк? Не достается. Ладно. Прячется она от меня. Кто же мог подумать, что сзади тоже что-то есть нужное? Я думал, сзади только картошку возить, чтобы. А тут смотри-ка. Стой. Нет? Не сзади это было? Вон ты где? А как тебя достать? Че, прям весь бак снимать? Блин, бак сверху, да? Надо снимать. Иди ко мне. О! Я тебя достал. Блин, я тебя снял, да? А какой ты был-то? Так. Ты был топливным насосом. Топливный насос. Топливный насос. Ты мне, блин, расскажи, почему, блин, куда что стало с тем аккаунтом? Ты понимаешь, что если ты купишь Диабло, ты можешь также остаться без Диабло. Если ты не... Почему ты восстановить ты его не можешь? Или что такое? Расскажи мне. Я должен знать. Чтобы помочь тебе. Может быть. Или поржать. Или чтобы у меня так не получилось. Конечно, не хочу, чтобы у меня так получилось. Да как я тебя, блин, доставал-то? Ты, блин, беда.
The name is really not suitable for the book. Be careful. I'm sure you'll find something excellent.
Very well, Mr. Cartwright.
And then there's the title. I notice you haven't given me a title at all. I want a suitable title also. Something in the style of the contents. But I beg you not to let anyone know that you are.
И как мне, блин, под тебя залезть?
You're disappointed,
No, not really. But I should rather have enjoyed taking my manuscript to the agency I work at and having one of the girls type it out without knowing it was mine and then telling them all.
Обалдеть. Не издевайтесь надо мной. Не заставляют меня приседать.
And I promise to think of a title and pseudonym.
Так. Поставили насос. Закроем. Багажник. Так, что у нас тут надо поставить? О, я же ничего не купил еще, да? Так, где мой список? Катушка зажигания. Ты пойдешь? Дроссель. Не знаю, что. Не знаю, кто ты. Что-то за насекомое. Дроссель В6Б. В6Б. Топливная рампа. 14В. Б. 14Б. Так. Куда это можно присобачить? Так. Маленький пистолетик, который в двигателе торчит. На всякий случай. Вдруг что случится? Можно его достать и застрелиться. Так, ну что, все, да? Все, я молодец. Вот это... А чё как мало? Чё какая маленькая премия? Смотри, все оказалось на месте. Сказка. Так, что дальше-то? Надо бы на этом закончить. Но у нас есть еще 4 минуты. Так. 77, 71, 71, 77. Давай возьмем вот этот. Не могу завести автомобиль. Может быть, он тебе и не нужен? Ведь если завести автомобиль, то его за ним придется ухаживать, водить его на улицу, кормить.
That was the first episode of Secret Lives by E.F. Benson, with Margot Boyd as
Катушка зажигания. И все. Сказка просто. Я даже, наверное, на эту его не буду ставить. Или буду? Обалдеть. Всего вот одна штучка красненькая. Из-за нее автомобиль не заводится. Какая бесполезная куча железа, а? Отставить.
Manning Wilson played
Mr. Woodstock.
Заметки.
George
Очистить.
Parsons, Figgis, Jennifer Pearson,
Добавить.
Gordon Reed, the foreman, Jonathan
Бжик.
Chaffin, the
Оу.
receptionist, Andrew Branch, the dealer, and Pauline Collins was
Susan Legg.
and
Так, катушка зажигания.
assorted dogs
Где там мой волшебный планшетик?
played by assorted members of the cast. The original music was composed by John Owen.
Катушка зажигания.
Secret Lives was dramatized and narrated by Aubrey Woods and directed by Ian Cottrell.
Secret Lives is back tomorrow with a change of theme as Miss Susan Legg heads to Brighton in a most salubrious seaside resort.
Готово!
A mischief-laden thriller comes calling
30
Miss
баксов
Halloween from the
чистого
pen of
дохода.
Robert Aikman. Ringing the Changes is an unnerving tale adapted by the League of Gentlemen's Jeremy Dyson
И
and
ящик.
Mark Gatiss.
И целый
When two
ящик мне
newlyweds
дали.
arrive at
Так,
their
где мои
honeymoon
ящики?
destination, it is a
Иди ко мне.
curiously deserted
Да, хочу открыть
seaside
карточки.
resort where the church
Давай.
bells
Раз,
ring
два, три.
and ring.
Че у нас тут? Ремешок. Какие-то супер штуки. Я и стесняюсь куда-то ставить. Они вон какие у меня. Так, теперь мы будем чинить вещи. А, опять нельзя чинить вещи. Что ж такое-то, а? Катушку зажигания даже починить нельзя. Давайте пропьем тогда. Видите ли, нельзя починить. Как новое же. А починить нельзя. Беда. Так, все. Сервис закрывается на ужин. Всем спасибо. Если ничего не случится, то где-то в 9 вечера мы пойдем в ночную смену. Вот.
Hello, it's 4 o'clock, and in a minute, Martin Young asks who goes there.
Вы знаете, где находится наш сервис. Приходите в любое время и смотрите, открыт он или нет. Так вот.
Is he paranoid, or are they really playing dirty? Simon's Bug is at 4:30.